Hi, Superthinkers. Today we're going to talk about how to create our architecture project in Tinkercad. And so I think what's really important here is I want you to be wild and imaginative. You can create buildings that are very beautiful, unusual, and strange shapes. But the starting point that we all need to start from is a realistically sized property and making sure that all of the parts of our building are to scale. So scale again means when we make something miniature, like a set of toys, an architectural model, we want to make everything shrunk by the same amount. So the way we're going to shrink things in this project is to say that 1 inch on our project equals 10 feet in real life. So each story of a building is about 10 feet tall. And so basically, each story of our buildings is going to be about 1 inch tall. And as long as you abide by that general rule, we should be okay. So just to give you an idea of what this might look like, this is the property you're going to start with. You're going to have a 10-inch by 15-inch property. And in real life, that would be 100 feet by 150 feet. And what can you fit in a property like that? Well, you could fit in this is Little Red Building. It's sort of what we would call a brownstone or row house in New York. It could hold 2 families, 1 wealthy family, a bunch of young people living together, maybe 8 young people living together. And this is an 8-story apartment building that could probably hold like 16 different families. So you have the choice about how densely packed you want your people to be and what sort of buildings are going to hold a reasonable number of people, but you have to think strategically. So I'm going to show you how to begin your project by drawing your property and starting to make it to scale. So you're going to create a new work plane, and the first thing you want to do is go here to the bottom right and click on Edit Grid. Now, all of architecture in the United States happens in feet and inches, so we're going to be working in feet and inches. So I'm going to change it from millimeters to inches, and I'm going to change the size of my work plane from 10 to 15 inches and hit Update Grid. Now, you can still build off the edges of your work plane, but the work plane is a really helpful reference just to get things the right size and to set reasonable goals. The next thing that I'm going to do is drag a box from my Basic Shapes menu. The Basic Shapes menu is going to be super important to architecture. We want to mostly be building our own stuff out of geometric shapes rather than borrowing it. So my goal is to stretch this box out to be 10 by 15, and by grabbing the white box on the top so it's super flat and turn it gray. And this is your property. This is what you have to build on. And it's useful to start from this point because it'll just keep your feet on the ground and help you make really fun, imaginative, but realistic buildings. Next, I'm going to go to the Characters menu. It has a lot of pre-made parts that are very silly. We're not going to use that many of them, but the one we're going to use that's super important is the Astrobot, because it's a person. So what I can do now is shrink it down. I can actually type in how high I want it to be, and I'm going to type in 0.7. 0.7 is going to be my height, and then I want to shrink it so that it doesn't look really, really wide, but has the proportions of a real person. And this is my reference for the size of an adult in our project. It's going to be 3/4 of an inch, 0.75 inches. The next step is to make my building. So again, I'm going to go to my Basic Shapes menu. Now you can do this a lot of ways. You could start by making an utterly fantastic shape and then adding windows and doors to it at a realistic scale. You could explore the movements like postmodernism and blobitecture and just go really wild. But for a basic building, my first step should be to make a single story and then duplicate it. So this is how I control the height of my first story, and I want to set it at 1 inch. I can see it right there, 1 inch. And that way I know if I make this story, I can duplicate it, and I will end up with proportionate windows and doors that are the right size. So I'm going to draw another box over here, and I'm going to shrink it down. So a door is going to go almost all the way to the top of a story of a building, but with a little bit of wall at the top there. And I'm going to change the color so it's clearer to like a light blue. You can use whatever color you want as long as it's clear. Next, I'm going to go up here to the top left where it says duplicate and repeat. This is an enormously important tool for this project. It's going to save you so much work. It's going to make your project look so much better. Remember to duplicate and repeat. So I'm going to make a window here. This is sort of a boring window. You can make your windows any shape. They could be round like an oculus. They could be ovals. They can be wild. But I'm going to start out with a boring square window, and I'm going to copy it again. Now, what's happening here that's kind of cool is if you continue to copy a shape over and over again, you can just hit that button and it'll make new ones that are going in a nice row. What's cool about this is it can make neat and tidy rows of windows. Not that everything has to be neat and tidy, but it's one way to keep your project organized and looking like a real building with real stories that someone could really live in. Next, I'm going to select my entire story here. Okay, so now by duplicating, what I did was I basically created a second story that's also exactly 1 inch tall, so it's proportionate to the first one and a copy. Not every part of your building should look like this, because if you keep doing this, you could end up with something a little bit on the boring side. So you could either just duplicate the stories, or you could duplicate the windows. But then you can add other features to your building to make it more interesting. But this duplication is a great way to create nice even rows of windows and doors that look really, really real. And I think you should have a balance in your project between things that look wild and fantastic and things that look like you could actually build them with real people on a reasonable budget. Because it's more exciting when we use our imagination to create something, for me, that you could actually execute. So watch, I'm adding tons and tons of stories to my building. Probably don't want a door on the 6th floor, but you get the idea. It can be very, very helpful to use the duplicate feature.